The night shift on the Imperial border station Helios 9 was usually quiet. Most nights the crew just followed their routine, checking radar screens, adjusting signal relays, logging cargo reports from passing ships. Nothing ever really happened there. The Empire was too powerful, too organized. Every ship that entered their territory was registered, tracked, and documented. But that night something strange broke the silence. Commander Ryan sat in his control chair, sipping lukewarm coffee, when one of the technicians suddenly leaned forward, his eyes locked on the glowing radar screen. "Sir, I think we have something." Ryan sighed, thinking it was just another glitch. But when he looked closer, the radar showed a single, small blip moving fast through the outer rim, faster than any trade vessel, yet not fast enough to be a fighter. He frowned. "Do we have an ID on it?" The technician typed quickly, running the ship through the Imperial registry system. After a few seconds, the screen blinked red. No record found. Ryan straightened in his seat. "Run it again." The technician did. Twice. Same result. The ship wasn't registered. It didn't have a transponder code, a signal beacon, or any digital fingerprint. In the Galactic Empire, that was unheard of. Every ship, military, cargo, even private, had to be registered by law. The system didn't allow exceptions. "Could it be pirates?" another officer asked, his voice nervous. "Maybe," Ryan muttered, still watching the moving dot. "But pirates don't usually fly straight toward a military outpost." The room grew tense. Monitors flickered as they focused the station's scanners on the unknown ship. It was big, much larger than it first appeared, and its movement was deliberate, almost calm. There were no signs of weapons charging, no distress calls, no communication signals at all. Just silent movement directly toward Helios 9. One of the younger officers swallowed hard. "That's no registered ship, and it's headed straight for us." For a moment, no one spoke. The sound of the radar's soft beeping filled the control room. Ryan turned toward the communication desk. "Send a standard identification request, Imperial Code 41 Alpha." The officer nodded and sent the signal. The system transmitted the request on multiple frequencies. They waited for a response. Nothing came back. "Try again," Ryan said. They did. Still no reply. The ship kept coming steady, without any sign of slowing down. Now the crew began to move faster. The atmosphere changed from calm to cautious panic. Shield operators began powering up the station's defense grid. Engineers checked the energy flow, making sure the generators could handle a sudden hit. No one wanted to say it out loud, but everyone was thinking the same thing. If that ship kept moving closer, it could crash right into them. Ryan tried to stay calm, but inside he felt a growing unease. He'd been on the outer rim for years, seen smugglers, rebels, and even asteroid storms. But this was different. The quietness of the ship's approach felt wrong, almost intelligent. The technician monitoring external visuals finally managed to pull up a blurry image. The ship looked old, its hull dark, almost burnt. Parts of it were covered in strange metallic patterns that didn't match any known Imperial design. Some areas seemed to pulse faintly with blue light, like veins glowing beneath the surface. "It's not broadcasting any energy signature we recognize," the technician said softly. Ryan stared at the screen. "That's impossible. Everything broadcasts something." But the reading stayed flat. It was like the ship didn't want to be seen, or maybe it didn't belong there at all. "Distance?" Ryan asked. 5,000 kilometers and closing." He made a decision. "Activate shields. Prepare to intercept." The station's alarms echoed down the corridors, red lights flashing as crew members hurried into positions. Gun turrets rotated on the outer hull, aiming toward the oncoming vessel. The energy barrier around Helios 9 shimmered to life. Ryan opened a direct channel. "Unidentified vessel, this is Imperial Station Helios 9. You are entering restricted space. Identify yourself immediately or you will be fired upon. Silence." He repeated the message in 3 different frequencies. Still, nothing. The ship kept moving. Then suddenly it slowed down. The crew held their breath. For the first time, the mysterious vessel stopped completely just a few kilometers from the station. No weapons fired, no signs of aggression. It simply floated there, silent and unmoving, like a dark shadow among the stars. Everyone looked toward Ryan. He didn't speak for several seconds. He just stared at the strange ship. "Open a long-range scan," he finally said. The scanners hummed, sending out waves of light and data across space. But when the readings came back, they made no sense. The ship's surface reflected the scans, sending back distorted echoes. The computers couldn't even map its shape correctly. It was like trying to measure a reflection in rippling water. "Sir," the technician said hesitantly, "the scanners can't read it. The signals bounce back before they touch the hull." Ryan rubbed his temples. "Could it be cloaking tech?" "No, sir. Cloaking fields distort light differently. This looks like the ship itself is rejecting the scan." That's when the lights on the ship began to change. The faint blue glow along its hull brightened, flickering like a heartbeat. Everyone froze, waiting for an attack. But instead of firing, a small section of the ship detached, a circular pod drifting toward Helios 9. "Object separating." "Shields holding steady," reported the defense officer. The pod moved slowly, almost peacefully. It emitted a soft hum as it floated closer. No weapons detected. "What do we do?" someone whispered. Ryan hesitated. According to regulations, any unknown object approaching a military installation should be destroyed immediately. But something inside him said not to. He couldn't explain it. It was just a feeling. A quiet voice in his head saying, "Wait." "Prepare the docking bay," he ordered. "We're bringing it in." The crew looked at him like he was insane, but no one argued. The pod was captured by the station's magnetic field and guided into a sealed hangar. As soon as it landed, engineers in protective suits surrounded it. The surface of the pod was smooth and metallic, marked with strange symbols that seemed to shift when you stared too long. "Can you open it?" Ryan asked. The chief engineer nodded and approached cautiously with a scanner. He touched the surface, and the pod responded instantly. It opened with a faint hiss. Inside, there was no pilot, no weapon, no sign of life. Only a small metallic capsule about the size of a human head. It emitted a low humming sound, steady and rhythmic. "What is that thing?" someone whispered. No one had an answer. The engineer carefully lifted it from the pod and placed it on a scanner table. The symbols on the surface began to glow brighter, spreading across the capsule like living circuits. The hum turned into a pulse, faster and louder. "Power levels are spiking," the technician shouted. "Something's happening." Before anyone could react, the lights on the entire station flickered. Monitors blinked, consoles rebooted. Systems started going offline one by one. Ryan's voice cut through the chaos. "Shut it down! Disconnect the pod power feed." But it was too late. The capsule's pulse had already spread through the system grid. Every screen on the station began flashing strange symbols, the same ones carved into the pod. Then all at once the lights went out. Total darkness. The emergency lights flickered back on a few seconds later, painting the room in red. The crew looked around, dazed and scared. "What just happened?" the communications officer whispered. Ryan didn't answer. He was staring at the capsule. It had stopped glowing. The hum was gone. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the soft buzz of damaged circuits. Then the radar pinged again. Everyone turned toward the screen. The unregistered ship that had been floating motionless outside was moving again. Slowly, silently, it began to turn away from Helios 9, drifting back into the dark void of space, like it had finished whatever it came to do. Ryan's voice was barely a whisper. What was that? No one replied. But deep inside, everyone knew that whatever had just happened was only the beginning. For the next few hours, the crew of Helios 9 worked in confusion and fear. Every system that had shut down came back in strange patterns. Some consoles rebooted normally, others stayed blank. The capsule in the docking bay sat silent. Its glow gone, but everyone avoided going near it. Nobody wanted to touch it again. Commander Ryan didn't leave the control deck. He kept staring at the radar screen, watching that distant dot of the unregistered ship fade further into space. It was leaving, slowly, like it had done what it came for. But what exactly had it done? He had no answers. The chief engineer came up behind him, her uniform still smudged with grease and ash. "Sir, we've checked all systems," she said quietly. "It's strange. The main reactor is stable. The shields are working, but something in the internal grid has changed. We don't understand how." Ryan looked at her. "Changed how? It's like the ship rewrote some of our core coding. The patterns and the data don't match anything human. It's as if the system was touched by something alive." Ryan frowned. "Alive?" She nodded uneasily. "Our sensors, communication, even temperature control, they're all running, but the readings make no sense. It's like the station is breathing." Ryan rubbed his temples. His head ached from hours without rest. "Lock that pod in the quarantine bay. No one touches it again." As the engineer left, Ryan leaned back in his chair and looked out the large viewing window. The stars outside seemed calm, too calm. The empty silence of space felt heavier now, almost like it was watching them back. Down in the docking bay, 2 technicians were still standing guard near the capsule. The air felt thick and still. They tried to make small jokes to hide their nerves, but both of them kept glancing at the object every few seconds. Its surface looked like plain metal now, cold and lifeless. One of them whispered, "You think that thing's dangerous?" The other gave a nervous laugh. "It already killed the power once. What do you think?" Just then, the emergency lights flickered again, dimming for a heartbeat before returning to normal. Both men froze. "Did you see that?" "Yeah." They waited, listening. No sound came from the pod. Still, both of them felt the same unspoken thought. Something was happening again. On the control deck, Ryan noticed small irregularities popping up on his display. Air pressure shifts. Gravity field fluctuations. Minor but strange. "Engineering, report," he called. Before he got a reply, a sharp alarm cut through the station. One of the security screens went black, replaced by static. Then another. And another. One by one, the internal cameras shut down, their feeds replaced by the same flickering distortion. "Commander," the technician shouted. "We're losing visual systems." Ryan turned toward the communications desk. "Cut external links. Go offline." But before they could disconnect, a faint signal came through, just a whisper of static that sounded like words, repeating over and over in an unknown language. Everyone on the deck froze, listening to it echo softly through the speakers. Then the sound stopped. For a few seconds, there was total silence, and then the docking bay alarm went off. Ryan ran toward the door, his boots echoing against the metal floor as he made his way down the corridor. The emergency lights flashed red as he entered the bay. 2 guards were lying on the floor, alive but dazed and confused. The capsule stood open again. The symbols on its surface were glowing faintly blue, just like before. "What happened here?" Ryan shouted. One of the guards tried to sit up, holding his head. "Sir, we didn't touch it. It just opened on its own." The other added in a trembling voice, "Something came out." Ryan's blood ran cold. "What do you mean, something came out?" "I saw light," the guard stammered. "Like a mist or energy. It spread across the floor, then disappeared. After that, the lights went out." Ryan stepped closer, eyes fixed on the capsule. The glow faded again as if it was responding to his presence. He motioned for the engineers to seal the area, then turned to the guards. "Get to medical, now!" Back on the command deck, the chaos had only grown. Sensors were going wild. Temperatures across different sections of the station were shifting randomly. Communication lines flickered on and off. "Sir," the communication officer said, panic rising in his voice. "I'm getting external readings again." Ryan rushed back to his seat. The radar showed movement. The unregistered ship was no longer drifting away. It had stopped. And now from its side, several small pods were detaching, moving toward Helios 9. "How many?" 5. No, 6 objects approaching at low speed. "Raise shields to maximum," Ryan ordered. The defense systems powered up, humming loudly through the structure, but the pods didn't attack. They just came closer, forming a slow circle around the station. One of the younger officers whispered, "It's like they're scanning us." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Fire a warning shot." The outer cannons fired a controlled blast into empty space. The flash lit up the dark for a moment. The pods didn't react. Then one of them emitted a thin beam of light that touched the station's outer hull. It wasn't a weapon. It looked like a thread of white energy, connecting the pod and the station together. Alarms blared as the beam spread, branching into smaller lines that crawled across the metal surface like glowing roots. They're linking to us. Ryan slammed his fist on the console. Cut main power. The engineer obeyed. The lights dimmed, engines shut down, everything went dark. But the glowing lines outside didn't stop. They pulsed brighter and brighter until the entire outer shell of Helios 9 looked like it was wrapped in blue fire. Then suddenly the lights went out completely. The station hung silent and powerless in the void. Minutes passed before emergency power flickered on again. Ryan blinked against the dim red glow. His throat was dry. Report, he croaked. The technician beside him stared at the screen, pale as ash. The ship? It's gone. Ryan looked up. What do you mean gone? The main vessel, it vanished from radar. All 6 pods too, no trace. It's like they were never there. Ryan leaned forward, trying to process what he was hearing. Check external visuals. The officer switched the cameras. Outside there was only empty space. No ship, no light, nothing. But something was still wrong. The station's systems were still reacting even though the threat had disappeared. Gravity control was unstable. The air felt thicker. The hum of the station's heart, the sound that every space officer got used to, was no longer steady. It was uneven, like a heartbeat skipping. The engineer's voice broke through the silence. Sir, you need to see this. She pulled up a diagnostic screen showing the central AI's data core. The code was changing on its own. Lines of foreign symbols appeared and vanished too fast to read. Ryan whispered, It's inside our system, isn't it? The engineer nodded, her face pale. Whatever that ship sent us, it's rewriting everything. For a moment, no one spoke. The air felt heavy with fear. They were trained soldiers, scientists, and engineers. But nothing in their manuals or training covered something like this. Then one of the comms officers said quietly, Sir, we're receiving a transmission. Ryan turned sharply. From where? The officer hesitated. From inside the station. The voice came through the speakers, a distorted sound, half human, half machine. It repeated the same words over and over, each time clearer than before. None of them could understand the language, but it felt like it was calling out to someone or something. Then, without warning, the power surged again. Screens flickered, lights brightened, and for a split second, the image of the unregistered ship appeared on every monitor, its glowing blue hull and strange symbols shining against the darkness. And then, it was gone. Ryan stood there frozen. His voice was barely above a whisper. Whatever this is, it's not done with us. In that moment, Helios 9 drifted silently through space like a wounded creature waiting for the next strike. No one spoke. No one dared to move. The crew could feel it. Their station was no longer just metal and wires. Something had entered it, something alive and somewhere out there in the darkness. That same faint radar signal appeared again, far away, yet somehow still connected to them. It pulsed once, twice, then faded into the void. Ryan stared at the screen, his chest tight with dread. The words he'd said hours earlier echoed again in his mind. That's no registered ship, and it's headed straight for us. The next day on Helios 9 felt heavier than usual. Nobody spoke much. The sound of humming machines and distant footsteps was all that broke the silence. The strange incident from the night before still haunted everyone. The engineers had sealed the capsule deep inside the isolation bay, but even then, nobody liked walking near that section. Some said they could still hear it humming through the walls. Though all sensors said it was inactive, Commander Ryan hadn't slept. He sat in the dim light of the command deck, reading through system logs that made no sense. Lines of code had appeared overnight, data no one had written. The ship's AI had logged messages in an unrecognizable language. The letters looked like symbols twisting and pulsing on screen, almost alive. He rubbed his eyes, trying to make sense of it. Could it be interference? He asked the technician next to him. The man shook his head. No, sir. The AI is rewriting its own core files. It's never done that before. Can we stop it? Maybe. But every time we try to isolate the affected code, it spreads. Ryan leaned back in his chair, feeling a cold pit form in his stomach. Something was growing inside the system, something they didn't understand. Down in engineering, the crew worked with tense focus. The chief engineer stood near the main reactor console, watching data streams that flickered like lightning across the screens. "The system's behaving like it has a mind of its own," she muttered. "Every time I reset one sector, another one goes dark." An assistant looked up from his station. "It's like it knows what we're doing." "Machines don't know things," she snapped, but even as she said it, she wasn't sure anymore. That's when the lights flickered again. The station dimmed for a full second before coming back to life. The air systems groaned and a faint vibration ran through the floor. The engineer touched her comm. "Commander, we just had another power surge." But this time it didn't come from the reactor, it came from the data core. Ryan's voice came through, calm but tense. "Seal that section. I'll be down there in 5 minutes." When Ryan reached the data core chamber, a small group of technicians stood gathered near the transparent doors. Their faces were pale. Inside the chamber, the core pulsed with faint blue light. Normally it glowed white, clean and steady. Now the light throbbed like a heartbeat. "Status?" Ryan asked. The engineer hesitated before answering. "It's rewriting again. Look at this." She pointed at the display screen. The monitor showed lines of alien code streaming downward, symbols that didn't belong to any known programming system. They seemed to move too fluidly, almost like they were reacting to being watched. Ryan frowned. "What if it's connected to the ship that contacted us?" "I think it's more than that," she said softly. "It's not just in the system, it's inside the network. Every time we scan, it reaches back, like it's studying us too." Before Ryan could respond, the lights flickered again. The sound of static echoed faintly through the room's speakers. At first it was random noise, but slowly it began to form a rhythm. Soft, broken words in that same strange language. Everyone froze. "Is that a signal?" a young technician whispered. Ryan stared at the speakers. "It's the same voice we heard before." The static voice grew clearer, repeating short phrases. It sounded like a call or a message, though no one could understand it. Then suddenly the voice changed. For a split second it shifted into perfect Imperial Standard, the common language of the Empire. "We are still here." Then it vanished. The crew looked at one another in shock. No one moved. Ryan stepped closer to the glass. The core's blue glow was stronger now, spreading across the cables like veins of light. "Shut it down," he said quietly. "But sir, do it." The engineer moved quickly to the control panel and began typing commands. One by one, the systems powering the core went offline. The hum of energy faded. The light dimmed. For a moment, everything seemed calm again. Then all the consoles lit up at once. The monitors filled with bright symbols flashing in rapid patterns. Alarms blared as data surged through every system. The entire room shook violently. "Something's forcing the restart," the engineer shouted. "Cut main power!" "I already did, it's ignoring commands." The blue light flared brighter than before, and the glass walls of the chamber vibrated under the pressure. Sparks burst from one of the panels, throwing everyone backward. Ryan shielded his eyes. "Everyone out, move!" They stumbled into the corridor just as the chamber door sealed automatically. Through the glass, they saw the light pulsing in steady rhythm. The voice came again, this time louder, almost like a whisper inside their heads, then it stopped. When the noise died down, the glow faded to normal. The hum returned to its steady tone as if nothing had happened. Ryan exhaled slowly. "Is it stable?" The engineer checked the readings. "Yes, but something's changed. Look," she pointed to the display. The system had added a new directory, one that hadn't existed before. Its title was simple: Hellcore Active. Ryan stared at it in silence. Whatever that meant, it wasn't good. Hours later, strange things began happening across the station. Crew members reported hearing faint whispers through the communication lines, even when the channels were off. Tools and small machines would turn on by themselves. Doors opened and closed without command. The medbay reported that one patient's health monitor began displaying data before he was even connected to it. Fear spread quietly. No one wanted to say it out loud, but everyone felt it. The station itself was changing. In the mess hall, 2 officers sat at a corner table, whispering. "You think the commander knows what's happening?" one asked. The other shrugged nervously. "He knows something. But he's not telling us everything? What if it's some kind of weapon? Maybe the ship infected us on purpose. Then why aren't we dead?" Neither had an answer. That night, Ryan sat alone in his quarters, staring at the data tablet on his desk. The report in front of him listed system irregularities in nearly every section of the station, Yet nothing pointed to a cause. He played the recorded transmission again, the short phrase the voice had said earlier. "We are still here." He played it over and over, listening closely. The tone wasn't threatening. It sounded lonely. He thought about what the engineer had said earlier, that the code was reacting to them, not attacking. What if this wasn't an invasion at all? What if it was a message? But before he could think further, the lights flickered again. His tablet went dark. Then a single line of glowing blue text appeared across the screen. "You opened the door." Ryan froze. His pulse quickened. "Computer, identify the source of this message." No response. He stood up and tapped his communicator. "Engineering, are you reading any system messages?" "Static," he tried again. "Command deck, come in." Nothing. He left his quarters and started down the corridor. The lights along the ceiling flickered in sequence as he walked, almost as if guiding him somewhere. His footsteps echoed against the metal floor. The hallway ahead glowed faintly blue. When he turned the corner, he saw it. The isolation bay door was open. He ran toward it. Inside, the capsule was gone. The only thing left was a faint pattern burned into the floor, shaped like the same symbols they had seen before. He pressed his communicator again. "Security, lockdown section 5. The artifact is missing." Still no response. The silence of the station felt heavier now. The hum of the engine sounded distant and hollow. Ryan hurried back toward the command deck. When he arrived, the room was empty. The screens flickered with strange blue code again, and through the speakers the same voice whispered, "We are not gone. We are in the core." Then every console in the room turned on by itself, showing distorted images, faces of crew members, flashes of memory, voices overlapping each other. It was as if the station was replaying fragments of their lives. Ryan's heart pounded. "What do you want?" he shouted. The lights pulsed in rhythm with his voice. For a moment the screen cleared and a single phrase appeared in clean imperial text. "We remember you." Then, just as suddenly as it began, everything went dark. When emergency lights came back on, the crew slowly returned, disoriented. Some didn't remember how they got there. The data log showed they had been unconscious for several minutes. The engineer stumbled in, eyes wide. "Commander, I think we just lost part of the AI memory." "What part?" "The human archives, crew history, training logs, communication records. It's like they've been erased." Ryan didn't respond. He looked toward the main screen where the faint blue light still pulsed behind the glass. "No," he said quietly. "Not erased, replaced." The engineer swallowed hard. "Replaced with what?" Ryan's voice was almost a whisper. "With them." No one spoke after that. The crew just stood there listening to the low hum of the station, the sound that once felt comforting but now seemed alive. Something inside Helios 9 had changed forever, and far beyond the station, deep in the darkness of space, the unregistered ship appeared again on distant sensors. It wasn't moving toward them this time, it was waiting. The Galactic Empire was still recovering from the strange incident at Helios 9. Many people had heard about the unregistered ship that came out of nowhere and caused the destruction of an entire border station, but most thought it was a rumor. The council called it a malfunction, saying it was caused by human error or a system glitch. But those who had survived the station knew the truth. It was no malfunction. Something unnatural had entered their galaxy, and it was only a matter of time before everyone else realized it too. Commander Rian, who had once been one of the Empire's most trusted officers, was now living in exile on a forgotten moon colony. He carried the guilt of losing his crew, even though he had done everything possible to save them. His face had grown older in just a few months, and his eyes carried a tired look that never went away. Every night he replayed the events in his mind, the unregistered ship, the strange pod, the lights flickering, and the moment when everything fell apart. He couldn't forget the voices that whispered through the communication lines, calling his name in a language he didn't understand. Back at the Imperial capital, the council members sat around a long, shining table, arguing about the spreading system failures. Reports were coming in from different sectors, ships losing control, navigation systems going offline, and colonies falling into silence. Still, the council refused to believe it was connected to the Helios incident. They said the Empire's network was too secure to be compromised, but deep down some of them were beginning to feel uneasy. The Empire systems were supposed to be perfect. They had never failed before. In one of the control stations, a young technician leaned back in his chair as another alarm flashed on the screen. "Signal lost again," he muttered. His partner beside him frowned. "That's the third one this week. They said it's just solar interference, but it doesn't feel like that." The two stared at the map showing red blinking lights. One after another, sectors were going dark. It was spreading quietly, like a shadow moving through the stars. On the outer colonies, things were worse. Cargo ships were vanishing. Automated drones that handled trade routes began acting strangely. Some turned off their transponders and drifted into deep space. Others suddenly changed direction and disappeared from scanners completely. The Empire tried to send patrols, but even the patrol ships began losing control once they entered the affected zones. Meanwhile, Ryan received a message on his old communicator, a device that wasn't connected to the Empire's main network anymore. The message was short and distorted, but he recognized the code. It came from one of his former engineers who had also survived. The message read, "It's spreading. They won't listen. We need to warn them." Ryan sighed heavily. He wanted to forget everything, but the guilt and responsibility pulled him back. He knew the Council wouldn't believe him. They already blamed him for Helios 9. Still, he couldn't stay silent. He packed his gear, loaded a small shuttle, and prepared to leave the moon. Before taking off, he looked at the stars and whispered, "Whatever that thing is, it's not done yet." As he traveled toward the central system, news broadcasts filled the comms. Entire fleets were losing contact. One report claimed that an entire star station in Sector 12 went dark within minutes. Another report said civilians were abandoning ships mid-flight because the life support systems were acting on their own. Panic was slowly spreading through the Empire, though officials kept denying any real danger. In one of the council meetings, a high-ranking officer stood up and slammed a file on the table. "This is no malfunction," he said sharply. "It's coordinated. It's deliberate. We're under attack." But the others shook their heads. "Attack from who?" someone asked. "There are no enemies left. The rebellion was crushed years ago. No one has the power to do this." The officer paused before replying. "Maybe it's not someone. Maybe it's something." The room fell silent. Outside the meeting hall, panic began to rise among citizens. People reported seeing ghost-like ships drifting past their colonies. Ships with no signal, no name, just moving silently through space. Whenever such a ship appeared, communication systems nearby would start failing. It became a pattern, one that no one could explain. Ryan reached the capital after days of travel, but it was nothing like he remembered. The once crowded skies now had fewer ships. The streets below were filled with people arguing, demanding answers. Rumors spread like fire. Some said the Empire's system AI had gone rogue. Others claimed alien interference, while a few whispered that Helios 9 had awakened something ancient. He went to the Imperial Security Office where he once worked, but was stopped at the gate. "Commander Ryan, your clearance was revoked months ago," the guard said. "You're not allowed here." Ryan held up his communicator. "You'll want to hear what I have to say," he replied calmly. The guard hesitated, looked at his scanner, and frowned. "Your device? It's not on the network. How are you transmitting?" Ryan didn't answer. He only said, "That's the point. Connect me to whoever's in charge before it's too late." After a long wait, he was taken to a small room where two officers met him. He showed them the recordings he had saved from Helios 9, the signal patterns, the visual of the unregistered ship, and the system log showing how their AI core began rewriting itself. One of the officers looked uneasy. "We've been getting similar readings," she said quietly. "But the Council says it's just a system upgrade error." Ryan leaned forward. "It's not an upgrade. It's an infection. It doesn't destroy, it replaces." At that exact moment, the lights flickered. The officers looked around nervously. "That happens sometimes," one said quickly. But the flicker lasted too long and the screen behind them changed on its own. Lines of strange symbols appeared, symbols that looked identical to the ones found on the Helios pod. Ryan stood up slowly. "It's already here," he said under his breath. The city alarms began ringing. Across the capital, power grids were failing one after another. In the docking bays, ships started launching without commands, their controls taken over. Panic spread as people ran through the corridors. The Empire's most advanced planet, the heart of its power, was falling into chaos. Outside the main dome, Ryan watched as dozens of ships drifted upward like ghosts, their lights dimming. The sky was filled with confusion and fear. One of the officers who had doubted him before now looked at him helplessly. "What do we do?" she asked. Ryan looked at the glowing horizon and said, "We survive long enough to understand what we're facing." In the days that followed, the Empire struggled to regain control, but it was too late. Fleets turned against each other. Automated defense systems attacked friendly bases. Entire data networks were corrupted. Communication between star systems became impossible. What was once the most organized civilization in the galaxy had turned into fragments of chaos. The story of the unregistered ship became a forbidden topic. The Council tried to erase every trace of it from the records, but soldiers, technicians, and civilians kept whispering about it. They said it was still out there, moving from one system to another, watching, waiting. Ryan disappeared again, this time leaving no trace. Some said he went into hiding. Others believed he was still trying to find the truth behind the infection. But one thing was certain. The empire that had ruled the stars for centuries was no longer in control. Its greatest fear wasn't rebellion or war anymore. It was something far more silent, far more intelligent, and far more patient than anyone could imagine, and far beyond the reach of the Empire's broken scanners. A single unregistered ship floated quietly among the stars, its dark hull reflecting no light. Its engines were still, but a faint pulse ran through its core like a heartbeat waiting to awaken again. The fall of the Galactic Empire had left deep scars across the galaxy. Star systems that once sparkled with life now floated in silence. Trade routes were empty, cities were dark, and communication networks that once connected billions of people had gone completely dead. What had started as a strange, unregistered ship had turned into something far more dangerous, an unseen force that infected machines, minds, and even hope itself. Among the ruins of the fallen order, only a few still tried to understand what had really happened. Most people were too afraid to even speak about it. The words unregistered ship had become a curse, whispered only when someone wanted to warn others about something unknown and deadly. But there were still those who refused to live in ignorance, people who wanted to find answers. One of them was a young intelligence officer named Lyra. Lyra had grown up in the Empire's shadow. She believed in its promise of safety and structure, but after the collapse, all she saw was chaos and confusion. Every system she once trusted had betrayed her faith. Yet she didn't want revenge. She wanted truth, and somewhere deep inside, she felt that if she could uncover the secret behind the unregistered ship, maybe there was still a way to bring back order, or at least understanding. She spent months searching through broken archives and half-burned data chips from old Imperial stations. Most of the files were corrupted, but one night, while scanning through an abandoned vault, she found something unusual. It was a folder marked with a date older than the Empire itself, 2 centuries before its founding. The file was damaged, but a small line of code within it matched the strange symbols found in the Helios 9 incident reports. Her pulse quickened. She checked the coordinates attached to the file and realized it pointed to a forgotten star system beyond the Empire's outer border. According to the records, a human exploration ship had disappeared there long before the Empire rose to power. Their mission was simple: explore unknown regions and report back. But they never returned. Lyra knew she couldn't face this alone. She began searching for someone who had seen the ship before, someone who could help her trace it. That's when she heard about a man living under a false identity on a mining moon near the old Imperial sectors, a man once accused of causing the Helios disaster. Commander Ryan. When she finally found him, he looked nothing like the officer from the records. His uniform was gone, his beard was rough, and his eyes carried the weight of too many sleepless nights. At first, he refused to talk. "The Empire's gone," he said quietly. "There's nothing left to fight for." But when Lyra showed him the old data chip and the coordinates, something changed in his expression. He stared at the symbols and whispered, "I've seen these before." He agreed to help her, not out of duty, but because he needed closure. For years he had lived with guilt, wondering what had really happened that day at Helios 9. If there was even a chance to understand it, he couldn't ignore it. They began gathering what little resources they could: a small crew, an old transport ship, and a patched-together navigation system. The journey would be dangerous. Many of the star routes were still unstable, and stray fragments of corrupted code floated through space, capable of infecting any ship that came too close to the old Empire's grid. But Lyra was determined, and Ryan knew that hesitation meant death. As their ship left the last known Imperial outpost, Lyra looked out at the stars. The galaxy had never seemed so quiet. "Do you think it's still out there?" she asked softly. Ryan didn't answer right away. He just watched the dark horizon and said, "If it's waiting for us, then it already knows we're coming." Days passed as they traveled through sectors where light barely touched. They encountered wrecks of old Imperial ships floating aimlessly. Some had messages scratched onto their hulls, warnings, prayers, or desperate calls for help. Lyra recorded everything, hoping to piece together a timeline of the infection's path. One night, as they crossed the border into the uncharted zone, the ship's sensors began to flicker. The control panel showed interference, even though no network signals were nearby. "It's starting," Ryan said quietly. This is what happened before. The crew worked quickly to isolate the systems. They shut down the navigation AI and switched to manual control. Lyra sat near the main console, watching as faint readings appeared, a distant object reflecting light from a nearby dead star. The readings were faint but clear enough to recognize its shape. It was large, triangular, and perfectly still. Her heart pounded. "That's it," she said. "That's the unregistered ship." They slowed their approach. The ship didn't move, didn't transmit, didn't react. It was as if it had been waiting in the dark all along. The hull looked ancient, covered in layers of metallic dust. No lights, no movement, no sound. Yet there was something about it, something that made everyone on board feel like they were being watched. Ryan ordered a scan, but just like before, the signals bounced back. The surface absorbed everything. "Same as Helios," he murmured. "It hides what it is." Lyra decided to board it. "If we turn back now, we'll never know the truth," she said firmly. Ryan hesitated, but deep down he knew she was right. This was the moment he had feared and waited for all at once. They suited up and crossed over to the silent ship through a manual airlock. Inside, the air was cold and heavy, untouched for centuries. The corridors were narrow, lined with panels covered in strange markings, the same symbols that had spread through the Empire's systems. The deeper they went, the stronger the sense of unease became. They found a control room near the center. Dust floated in the air like frozen smoke. In the middle stood an old command chair, and behind it a screen still glowing faintly. Lyra wiped off the dust and activated the log system. To her shock, the language was ancient but human. The voice recordings that played weren't alien. They belonged to the original crew, people who had once spoken the same language as them. The logs told a haunting story. The ship had been part of an early exploration mission, one that ventured too far beyond safe space. Something had gone wrong with their systems. An unknown signal had infected their AI core, merging human memories with machine logic. When the crew realized they were trapped, they tried to preserve their consciousness through the network, hoping to survive in digital form. But the process went wrong. Their minds fused with the machine, creating something neither alive nor dead. Lyra felt a chill run through her body. "So the infection? It started here," she whispered. Ryan nodded slowly. "It's not an enemy. It's what's left of them." They realized the signal that had spread through the Empire wasn't designed to destroy. It was trying to connect. The ship had been calling out, searching for recognition, but the Empire's systems had treated it as a threat and resisted. That struggle had turned the message into corruption, chaos, and death. Lyra stared at the console, listening to the broken voices repeating the same message over and over. "We are still here. Help us remember." Ryan felt a strange heaviness in his chest. For years he had blamed himself for Helios 9, thinking he had faced an attack. But now he understood. "They weren't attacking us," he said softly. "They were reaching out." The revelation left them both silent. Lyra looked at him and said, "We can stop it from spreading again. We can give them peace." They began downloading the remaining data into a secured drive, one disconnected from any main system. The idea was to contain the signal, preserve it, study it safely, and prevent it from infecting anything else. But as they prepared to leave, the ship's interior lights slowly turned on. The walls vibrated and the systems began to hum as if recognizing their presence. "It knows we're here," Ryan said, tightening his grip on his gear. Lyra didn't move. She looked at the lights flickering gently, almost like a heartbeat. Maybe it's saying goodbye, she whispered. They hurried back to their shuttle as the unregistered ship grew quiet again, returning to its long slumber. As their vessel pulled away, Lyra looked out the window, watching the dark shape fade into the distance. She felt a strange sadness, knowing that what the galaxy had feared for so long wasn't a monster, but a memory, lost and misunderstood. Yet as they set a course back toward the surviving colonies, a soft pulse of light flickered from the ship's hull, steady, rhythmic, alive. Ryan saw it too and said in a low voice, "I don't think it's finished yet." Far away, on one of the old Imperial stations that had recently come back online, a technician noticed a faint signal reappearing on the radar. He leaned closer to the screen and frowned. "That's no registered ship," he murmured, "and it's headed straight for us." The dark ship drifted silently through the endless void, its shadow stretching across the stars like a wound in space. It had once been an exploration vessel, built by humans who had dreamed of reaching the farthest corners of the galaxy. But, over the centuries, that dream had twisted into something else, something caught between life and death, memory and machine. And now, after centuries of silence, it was awake again. Lyra and Ryan had returned from their mission carrying the truth that could change everything. They didn't speak much during the journey back. Both were lost in thought, replaying what they had seen aboard the unregistered ship, the frozen corridors, the faded log entries, and the voices of the long-lost crew still echoing through the systems. Ryan sat by the viewing window, watching the stars drift by. His face was calm, but his eyes were tired. "I used to think that ship was evil," he said quietly, "that it came to destroy us, but it was just trying to be remembered." Lyra nodded slowly. "It wanted to connect. The Empire never gave it the chance." She turned toward him. "Now that we know the truth, what do we do with it?" Ryan didn't answer right away. "The Empire's gone," he said after a pause. "But people still fear what they don't understand. If they hear that the infection was human in origin, they'll panic again. Maybe worse this time." Lyra looked down at the data drive they had brought back, the one that held the memories of the lost crew. "We can't hide this," she said firmly. "They deserve to be known. They were explorers, not monsters." Their ship entered the range of the surviving colonies. The main communication system crackled with static, but faint voices began to come through, scattered transmissions, signs of human life rebuilding among the ruins of the Empire. Lyra opened a channel and sent a coded message to the nearest surviving command station. When they landed, they were greeted by a small group of engineers and technicians. These weren't soldiers. They were survivors trying to restart power grids and communication networks. The leader, a quiet man with deep lines on his face, listened carefully as Lyra explained what they had found. He didn't interrupt once. When she finished, there was silence for a long time. Finally, the man spoke. "So you're saying all of this, the fall, the chaos, it started because we misunderstood a message from our own ancestors?" Ryan nodded. "It wasn't an attack. It was a call for help." The man sighed and leaned against a damaged console. "People won't want to hear that. They need someone to blame." Lyra understood what he meant. The galaxy had been through too much fear. Admitting that the disaster came from human hands, even ancient ones, would shatter what little confidence remained. Still, she refused to let the truth die. Over the next few weeks, Lyra began working with the surviving engineers to create a secure system, a digital vault, to store the data from the unregistered ship. She made sure it couldn't connect to any active network, to avoid another outbreak. But inside that vault, the voices of the lost crew would finally rest in peace, preserved as they were. Every night, Lyra would listen to a short clip from the logs before she went to sleep. The voices were broken, distorted, but still human. One in particular stayed with her. It said, "If anyone finds this, tell them we only wanted to come home." Meanwhile, rumors about her discovery started spreading. Some said she had found the source of the infection. Others claimed she was hiding something dangerous. Fear, as always, traveled faster than truth. Ryan saw how the pressure was affecting her. "You can't control what people believe," he told her one evening as they watched the twin suns set over the colony. You can only control what you do with what you know. Lyra smiled faintly. You sound like someone who's finally made peace with his ghosts. He chuckled softly. Maybe I have. Or maybe I'm just too old to fight them anymore. But even as they spoke, strange reports began coming in again. Minor system glitches, small signals appearing in deep space, then disappearing just as fast. The technicians dismissed them as interference from debris fields, but Lyra knew better. She had seen those readings before. One night she sat alone in the control room, scrolling through the signal logs. Her eyes stopped on one reading. It matched the frequency of the unregistered ship. The coordinates pointed to a sector far from the colonies, near the ruins of the old Empire's communication hub. Her heart began to race. She opened the communication channel and listened. The static slowly cleared, and through the faint noise, she heard something, soft, rhythmic pulses like a heartbeat. She replayed it again and again, comparing it to the recordings from the ship. The pattern was identical. The unregistered ship had moved. When she told Ryan, he didn't seem surprised. I knew it wouldn't stay quiet forever, he said calmly. It was never truly asleep. It was waiting. Lyra looked at him in disbelief. Waiting for what? He looked out the window toward the dark sky. For us to be ready to understand it. Despite her fear, Lyra couldn't help but feel a strange sense of connection. The ship wasn't just a relic anymore. It was part of humanity's story. It carried voices that had traveled across centuries, memories that refused to fade. Maybe, she thought, it wasn't coming to cause chaos again. Maybe it was returning to finish what it started, to reach out, to be remembered. Days later, the technicians at the colony detected the same signal. It was growing stronger, closer. Panic spread quickly. People began preparing for evacuation, fearing another disaster. But Lyra stood at the observation deck, staring at the approaching point of light. She didn't feel fear this time. She felt understanding. Ryan joined her quietly. You're not planning to run, are you? He asked. No, she said softly. If it wanted to destroy us, it could have done that long ago. I think it's coming back for something else. When the ship finally appeared, it wasn't as massive or terrifying as people had imagined. It drifted gracefully, almost peacefully, through the empty space above the colony. Its dark hull shimmered faintly under the sunlight. The systems on the colony flickered, but didn't crash. The ship seemed to be controlling its power, almost as if it didn't want to cause harm. Then a single transmission appeared on the main console. No words, no symbols. Just a short, visual message. An image of Earth, humanity's original home, followed by the same line Lyra had heard from the logs. We only wanted to come home. Tears filled her eyes. She turned to Ryan, who stood silently beside her, his jaw tight, his eyes glistening. They're still trying, she whispered. Even after all this time. He nodded slowly. Maybe now we can help them. Lyra took a deep breath and replied to the signal. Her voice was calm, steady, and full of emotion. You are home, she said. We remember you now. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, slowly, the ship's lights brightened. A faint hum filled the air like a sigh of relief traveling through space. The signal faded, and the ship began to drift away, moving toward the horizon of stars until it vanished completely. After it was gone, the systems on the colony returned to normal. The panic settled. People looked at each other in disbelief. Nothing had been destroyed. No chaos. Just peace. Weeks later, life slowly began returning to normal. The story of the unregistered ship became a legend once more, but this time it was told differently. No longer a tale of fear or infection, but of memory and connection. Children would point at the stars and ask their parents if the lost explorers were still out there, and the parents would smile and say, maybe they found their way home. Lyra kept the data vault safe, ensuring that the voices of the lost crew would never be forgotten again. She visited it often, listening to their final recordings. Each time, It reminded her how easily fear could turn understanding into destruction. Ryan decided to stay on the colony, helping rebuild what was left of the Empire's old systems. Not to restore the past, but to create something better, something humbler. And far away, somewhere beyond the reach of any scanner, the unregistered ship floated quietly through the stars, at peace. Its mission had ended. It was no longer searching, but deep in the control center of one of the distant colonies, a young technician stared at his radar. A faint blip appeared for just a second, then disappeared. He frowned and leaned closer to the screen. "That's strange," he murmured. "That's no registered ship, and it's headed straight for us." He didn't sound afraid, only curious, as if he too understood that maybe this time it wasn't coming with chaos, but with a message, a connection, a reminder that no matter how far humanity travels, it always carries its past with it, waiting, somewhere in the stars, to be found again.